Russia has started preliminary voting in the so-called presidential elections in the temporarily occupied territory of the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions. Earlier, the main intelligence department of Ukraine reported that workers from Russia had arrived in the occupied territories who would monitor the areas and falsify the results. It is allowed to vote with both a Russian and a Ukrainian passport, according to Ukrainian intelligence. This is further evidence that forced passportization in the occupied territories of Ukraine has failed. Propagandists tell you who to vote for and where to check the box.
Everyone was informed that early elections would begin in a number of localities on February 27th, 29th. They will continue until 4 p.m. After 4 p.m., there will be door-to-door inspection of people who did not come to the polling stations, or people with limited mobility, or elderly people who could not get there. They walked around the courtyards, invited and intimidated people even before that. Perhaps this has never happened in the world when people, citizens of another state, had to or could vote for the Russian dictator Putin. Alexander Tolokonnikov, head of the press office of the Kherson Regional Military Administration, in an interview with the News of the Azov Region publication.
Pseudo-elections in the territories occupied by Russia are nothing more than a farce. The goal is to show Europe the alleged support for Putin, experts say.
Thus, such legitimization is connected with the final consolidation of these territories as part of the Russian Federation and from a position of strength, from a position of victories that the Russian authorities expect. After capturing these administrative territories, Russia then carries out mobilization after the presidential elections and inflicts a decisive defeat already in the summer campaign.
House-to-house visits, forced passportization, video civilians with a facial recognition system at polling station and propaganda. Russia launched a propaganda show about the so-called Russian presidential elections in the temporarily occupied territories, the goal of which is to create collective responsibility for the Kremlin's crimes. People are going to vote for Putin even in the trenches.
Russia is very active in the international arena in manipulating the fact that elections are not being held in Ukraine yet, and they are trying to demonstrate that in Russia elections will be held under any conditions, even if these are pseudo-elections with door-to-door visits. In the future, they plan to use this message in anti-Ukrainian media. Katerina Mikhailivska, analyst of the civil network Opora, in an interview with the Crimea Reali publication.
The illegitimate elections in March of this year in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine are not just another crime and a violation of the norms and principles of international law, in particular the UN Statute, but also a violation of human rights, lawyers emphasize.
The holding of elections by the Russian Federation in the temporarily occupied Ukrainian territories is the consequence of the illegal usage of armed aggression, which is an international crime, and also the legalization of these processes is not democratic and is associated with a violation of human rights.
The Ministry of Justice of Ukraine has already stated that the so-called elections and referendums in the uncontrolled territories of the country are invalid and have no legal consequences. The illegitimate Russian presidential elections are not recognized in the European Union either. Reported by Diana Kolesnik, Yulia Granovska, UATV News.